this structure if and when they lose sight of where they're headed. We're going to have some questions at the end. Over to you two.
Thank you. We can play the video, I think.
Need to feel like they don't belong. Tethered. We are Blackfish.
She got a seatbelt on the law!
More than a fishing crew. Black people in the UK have been made to feel like they don't belong, lack a connection to their own land, untethered. These are people who were born here, whose parents were born here, who have shaped culture here, but don't feel seen or heard. Whole industries not yet speaking to a huge section of the population. We know being in and around water has healing properties and can help with trauma. So from cities to seas, we not only reconnect people with the land, but all rivers, lakes and seas belong to we. We are Blackfish.
First Nations people and the old fishermen on the coast, they call them blackfish. And they're an animal that possesses great spiritual power, and they're not to be meddled with.
Thank you. Shout out to the editing skills of Alexis there. So yeah, we are Blackfish, and we thought this was perfect timing for us to kind of step out and sort of formally introduce Blackfish, and our plans to launch in March 2025. You know, when the spring, the summer's out, let's get out there. So I think we'll start with the name. So I'm assuming everybody's seen the documentary Blackfish.
So do you make the connection? Did you make the connection? Because, yeah, we did. We felt like the whales were exactly what was done, sorry to hark on about the past, but like to black people and displaced and taken out of their homes and then sort of demonized for acting up, I guess. And so there was a very big synergy, wasn't there, with Wales and us?
It was like, so, you know, there is why they were and how they were, the orcas were captured in the first place, right? And as the documentary, and they're explaining their reasons, and they're talking about the, you know, it's for entertainment, you know, to be in SeaWorld, but the wording and the orcas were a commodity, right? And the language being used, like thinking about the transportation of the orcas, and you know, it's like these words sound familiar, right? It's an orca in the sea, but this is not the only type of, you know, species or mammal that gets used in this type of way, right? There was also something that really struck me was
the people who
one of the capturers,
them. Yeah.
right? Yeah, there was a moment in the documentary when one of the capturers got really emotional, right? Because he remembered the other orcas swimming around the boat and making vocal noises that he knew were, you know, the voices of pain and grief and seeing, you know, this kidnap happening. And even though this was years ago, this was decades ago for him, he was still emotional speaking about it. And it made me think about Dr. Joy Leary, post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's something on YouTube, an amazing lecture to watch. And what she speaks to is that it's not just about people who are descendants of slaves and what the effect of that is. It's also about the people that were descendants of slave overseers, right? There was a lot of, in the Caribbean, a lot of Irish slave overseers, and there's also a legacy there of shame
And trauma.
and guilt and trauma there too, right? So like, you know, it really reminded us of the fact that this isn't, you can't look at this as though it's only one people who have suffered and still have DNA and ancestral trauma there, right? And the other thing was the physical. So remember, like, Tillicum, that's it. Tillicum's fin was like bent over. You remember that, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? So that, yeah, you know, and it was.
That only happens with captured whales.
Exactly.
It didn't happen in the wild.
Exactly. And again, there was a connection there, because it's like, why does every time it gets to October, my skin starts to fade, right? My muscles don't feel right. I'm walking and I feel a bit stiff, and you know, and then I go on holiday. I go to like Jamaica or something like that, and all of a sudden, my muscles feel loose again, and you know, there's moisture in the air, and you know. But for real though, there's a lack of vitamin D here, right? And we know how important vitamin D is, and it's like, that's not even. It's, you know, it's an example of why this isn't just a past thing. Like, in my presence is the colonial evidence of being displaced, you know. So yeah, that's the name, and also the clip we played at the end was really powerful. And how indigenous countries call them blackfish, and how they have great spiritual power. And I really like that as well, because what Blackfish, the community, is about is recognizing that being reconnected to water, reconnected to the land, is a way of, you know, finding home, finding peace. So that's the name Blackfish. Can you introduce what Blackfish is?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think from a personal standpoint, for me, I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. And I'm sure a lot of you resonate with that too. Like, where do you fit in? Where do you belong? I didn't feel like this land was mine. But yet, where the fuck was I? Where was my home? My mum's white, my dad's black. I have very, you know, little connection with my Irish side of the family and with my Caribbean side of the family. So, you know, people sort of saying go home and stuff like that. Where do I go? You know, so, and there is a thing with, you know, if you are black or brown, you don't feel like this is yours. And so you're not going to look after the land. And so what we want to do is try and champion people to really get out in nature, to be with the sea, and, you know, learn new skills. Fishing is fucking useful. As you saw, I'm very fucking proud of my sea bass catch, which was really good.
22 inches.
It was a big one. And, you know, it's all about size. And then she cooked it because she's a chef, and it was delicious. So these are really useful skills that we can teach, but also it's about, you know, therapy. What's the healing benefits? Obviously, you're here, so you know about the healing benefits of being out in nature. And I'm studying to be a psychotherapist, so, you know, I know when I talk to my teenage daughter in the car, that's the only fucking time she talks to me, because we're doing something. We're not looking at each other. And fishing is a great way to bond and for community. And yeah, it's just, I mean, we're very, very passionate about fishing. I did used to go fishing with my dad on the rare occasions that I saw him, and that was my most special memories of him and of my childhood. So I've reconnected with it, and I just want to share it with everyone now.
Did you both fish growing up? Did you spend a lot of time fishing?
No, I didn't fish growing up. fish itself and seafood was a big part of growing up for me, right? So my gran cooked a lot of fish. Fish was special to her because she lived in the countryside in Jamaica. So for her, going to the sea to get fish was an all-day activity. So they would get to the coast, get to the fishermen, buy the fish, and they would cook it up at the beach. And she said what they would do was dip it, when it's cooked, dip it in the sea, and that adds salt, right? So it was kind of regarded as quite a special thing, right? To have like fish on a Sunday, escoffiche, fried fish and things like that. So fish itself and seafood was always special. But I came across like a YouTube video or something of someone fishing and was just like, that looks chill.
Yeah, well, and people do it to meditate. And I'm really lucky in that I did some interviews a while back on a project based in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad's just the most amazing blend of cultures, blew my mind. And I interviewed Alexis's dad, and this whole food community thing. And he didn't start that way. He didn't start talking about that. But when it came, I couldn't stop it. It was quite amazing.
I still don't know what you talked about. You probably know more than I do.
Told me all your secret. No, he didn't. We talked about this because Trinidad is a combination of African and Indian. It's this incredible kind of like culture that is as much about doubles, which are these beautiful Indian foods, but have been done in a kind of much more Jamaican way, and it was just amazing. Sorry, in a much more West Indian way. I apologize. African way, frankly. But tell me about, because we finished on this last night, community and food, and how do we build community? What does that look like?
Yeah, so that's sorry, I didn't answer your question actually. Community. So I used to run a blog called Starmy Sunday, and that was fairly successful, I guess. I had over 100,000 followers. I have deactivated my account at the moment because I just really find social media very noisy and really quite difficult sometimes to just understand what's in your own head, right? So I have just put it on pause while we focus on this project, and I can kind of figure out how to go from talking about fashion and sex and all the things I talked about on there to now talking about fishing. I'm not sure how we're going to do that.
You're cool.
But we're going to do it. So I'm going to work that out at some point and try and sort of move some of my community over to Blackfish, because that really has my heart. But also you need to utilize the communities that you are already in contact with, right? And sort of bring them over if they're interested. But I was also going to say something about, this is a fishing group sort of championing black and brown people, but it is not just for black and brown people, because listen, my ex-husband is a white man, so we mix, we're beautifully mixed, so it's not like it's exclusively for black and brown people, because ultimately we want you all to come and to support us and to feel as passionate as we do, because we know for the environment, everyone needs to feel like this belongs to them. Everyone needs to feel like the land is important to them. This
is my country.
It is. It is. Community, I keep fucking going off track. Why? I think that's our focus. That's our focus now, building community before we properly launch in March. We want to try and get as many people knowing about Blackfish as possible. We'd love to be able to make it accessible for people. We'd love to be able to give them, a fishing rod and all the paraphernalia and stuff. We love waders. We'd love some waders, please. They're so sexy.
Patagonia just done a new launch of products, and waders are at the forefront. I'll hook you up.
Please do. And so, yeah, building community is what we're focusing on now. Have I answered the question? I'm gonna move on.
Something with waders, right? When we were fishing the other day, Alexis had the waders on, and it was high tide. So high tide means it's coming in, it's hitting, You know, the water's hit, the waves are right on the
good
shore.
feeling.
Right?
Yeah.
And she was out there lure fishing, which means you throw the lure out, reel it back in. Throw the lure out, reel it back in. And the waves are like hitting up against her, like right up to her chest. And she just hollered, "Woo!"
I did that quite a few times.
And it was really beautiful to watch because it was like, you know, this is the water. Do you know what I'm saying? This is like the power of the water.
Yeah.
And the healing properties of the water.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just really, it just made me think of that when we were talking about
and
waders.
sunrise, we were out in sunrise.
Yeah.
It's just so beautiful being, anyway, I know I'm talking to the converted here,
But it is really interesting. I mean, water is my element as well, and being in cold water is where I find myself. It's where I lose myself, and there's that horrific stat. I'm going to misquote it. Something like only, I think 10%. No, it's more than that. It's 40% of Londoners don't have their feet on bare ground in a year, and let alone in a stream, in a river. And we were born that way. We were born to be cold, to catch, and when we commune in nature, we do lose some barriers and we do have deeper conversations with ourselves. But also, it's where we find awe. And that awe, AWE, is being hit by a big wave in waders. Absolutely. It's reeling something in that you don't know whether you can get in. How do we convert? Because you've always built community, by the way. You always have. How do we begin to inspire people who don't know what that feels like to get wet, get cold, and maybe get uncomfortable?
that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
From the cities to the seas.
Yeah, that is going to be one of our taglines. So, how do we? I think we make it as easy as possible. Yeah, we were thinking about that yesterday, actually. Like, literally just hiring a coach and putting on, you know, a day, bringing them out to the sea, reducing the obstacles, I guess. But also what we found is when we've sort of had to trial, you know, putting on Blackfish days, people will say they're going to come and they don't come. So that's one of the things that we have to work around, especially because it's normally early, isn't it? It's really early that we're trying to go out because we want to get in before high tide and then high tide and then a little bit afterwards. So we were thinking about that and like maybe making a commitment, like people actually, Tom gave us this idea actually last night. You give money, make a commitment, and then if you come, we reward you by giving your money back to you. But that is a challenge that we really need to think about. And, you know, we would love your help with ideas and stuff. So please do holler at us.
Yeah, ask people. Just for the last 5 minutes speech, the whole idea of saving the planet, using fishing as a conservation tool, and the other implications that sit behind conservation. Can you talk about that for a few minutes?
Yeah, you know, I think saving the planet itself is like an interesting term, right? Because it's not a term that you hear indigenous people talk about, right? Indigenous cultures don't speak about saving the planet. The culture is to be with it, you know, connect to it. Like I look after this tree. The tree gives me fruit, sweet, you know what I mean? And that is what Blackfish is, right? It's like, this isn't about perhaps the egotistical way of viewing trying to save the whole entire planet, right? Like, I've got this company, we're going to save this planet, no problem. It's about, as an individual and as about a collective, realigning the focus to, it's just the water, right? Like, okay, when I'm here, I'm getting a chance to understand that I'm not going to throw something in it, you know what I mean? Because I'm spending time here and it's making sense, right? And that is what we want to do with Blackfish, right? And that's why we feel that this is kind of, you know, readjusting the way we look at what it means to save the planet. and taking the advice from Indigenous people. There was somebody yesterday I heard in a talk, and they said that how can you have a conversation about like the conservation of the earth without having Indigenous people as kind of spearheading that conversation, right? And that made so much sense and rang so true, you know. Blackfish isn't trying to save the planet. Blackfish is getting people to recognize that we are the caretakers. You know what I mean? I went to Jamaica one time. I went up to the hills, these mountains, the Maroon Tribe mountains, and I was talking to one of the Rastas up there, and we were talking about countries, and he was like, you know, before Jamaicans were here, there were Arawak, like an ancient tribe. So how can I even say I'm a Jamaican and this is my land when there were people here before me, right? So we're just caretakers. We're here to look after it while we're here, right? And
but
that's
also, what can we learn from the land rather than thinking we're going to fucking save the planet,
That's
which
what
is
it is.
it is giving, you know, white savior syndrome, if I'm going to be brutally honest. What can, let's just be with the planet. Let's see what the planet will teach us, because I'm sure the planet is a lot wiser than we are. We just need to listen.
Exactly. We just need to be quiet and
Right.
long enough. Look, we're gonna close. We've got a really busy morning, which I'm not going to apologise for because it's blisteringly good. But we're going to close with some questions. So, have we got any questions in the audience for Speech or Alexis about Blackfish, about nature, maybe even about rapping? I don't know. Any questions in the audience?
Or advice,
Yes.
anything.
There you go. Thank you. Just microphone by your right. That's it.
Cheers. It's amazing. Thank you so much for that. It was brilliant. I live down in Cornwall in a cabin, but you know it's more.
Oh, can we come?
Well, the problem is I live in this cabin. And it's more of a shed, and I'm going to use the microphone. And I live next to the Helford Estuary, and it's one of the best bass fishing grounds in the whole country. And every weekend, I've been going out and I've been casting a line, trying to catch a bass, and I've never done it. Can you please come to Cornwall and show me how to do it?
I'll show you.
Amazing.
I feel, you don't know how fucking proud I was of myself. I feel like I can teach everyone now.
Do you know what?
It's really hard to catch a bass.
It's really hard,
so
but you know what?
that's
Some
amazing.
advice, because this is what we made notes of this afterwards, after she caught that one. It was that it was high tide, so it was coming in, and because of that, the small fishes get pushed around everywhere. Sea bass are really strong, so they can fight the tide, and they got a good chance. And secondly, there were birds. Yeah.
Oh, and
there was a lot
aerated.
of birds around, which meant there was lots of little fish around, which is why the sea bass was around. So you got to look up and you got to look down.
And aerated water. So if it's like choppy, that is a great time to do it.
And I got a tip here, weirdly, this summer, from a Japanese fisherman who lives in Frome called Atsushi. And he said exactly what you just said. He said, wait till the water's coming in. The white bait are being driven in by the mackerel, and the mackerel are being followed by the sea bass. So when
And the birds are watching it all.
and the birds are having everything, right? So then you cast out beyond the mackerel towards the sea bass. I think that might numb your senses and judgment a little, right? I think I'd go for a toast ale, and I'd go for their low ABV one, is what I would do.
Specifically.
Any other questions? Yes, one at the back there, please.
I'm just going to add to that and say there's a reason why it's called fishing, not catching.
Boom.
Yeah. That's what we
Boom.
we hear all the time, isn't it? It's a fishing, not catching.
I love that.
It's still fucking good. It's still good even if you don't catch anything.
Exactly. So I think it's experience, but I'm not a fisherman. We work with a lot of communities in Bristol, particularly in central Bristol, alongside groups like Black to Nature, in getting young people out into the outdoors, and it's an amazing experience. And I love, particularly around sort of Jamaican youngsters, Somali, etc. What more can we do to really grow that belonging within all sorts of communities, so it is generally inclusive and everybody belongs?
Great question. Brilliant question. I think So yesterday there was a talk here, and I asked about diversity and inclusion, and how are you doing that in your company? And she said something about videos and imagery, and
It's difficult.
and then it's difficult. And I went, no, it's not. It's really not difficult. You give people a chance to be at the table, to make decisions. You don't just put black people up on your screens because it looks diverse. It's such an easy and basic thing to do. What you do is you hand over some power and you incorporate them into your companies and give them good roles. You know, you actually employ them in decision-making roles, and you let yourself be uncomfortable to hear things that you might not want to hear. And that's how you do it. So it's just really important to not just put black and brown people on your websites, actually employ them and put them in your boardrooms.
You know, like, being uncomfortable is really important, right? And I think that's even another reason why we went for the name Blackfish. You know what I mean? Like, we're making a very clear point here, right? But being uncomfortable is important. Like, we were talking about yesterday's session. We had a lot of information that was dope yesterday. But something that at the end of the day, we were downloading is that of the people that we spoke to, introduced Blackfish on a one-to-one conversation, twice we got recommended a knife crime. I don't know, like, here's somebody, I know somebody who works in knife crime. That would be a great connection. And so we were...
You were going, wait a minute, what links, what's the link from fishing to knife crime? Why do people keep mentioning that?
Right. So we were laughing because we were saying, like, oh man, you know, if we get the chance again today to hear somebody say about knife crime, like, you know, we might be like, oh no, you know what? That's a great idea. We're gonna, like, we have like a we know somebody who works in
Are you figuring out how to say this?
No, I'm trying to remember what I said. Oh, we know somebody who works in the area who works with like reformed pedophiles. We think the connection would be amazing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could do great work in that area, right? Because that's how crazy that is, right? So being uncomfortable is gonna have to be how it is, right? And that's important, and that's what Blackfish is doing. You know, like, I spoke to somebody yesterday that was saying that, oh, you know, fishing. It's cool. It's so cool that you two fish, right? Because in their experience of fishing, it's older white men, it's boring. And in my head, I'm saying, yeah, because it's cool, because we telling you it's cool. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what the culture is. When we say it's cool, it becomes cool. So let's all do it. Let's get on board. Do you know what I mean?
I love that. Look, I would love to have more questions, but we've got to move on to the next speaker. This is just starting, and if there's any help you can give, any expertise that you can give, if it's requested, then please do so. Community's magic. Fishing is a simple pleasure, and I'm all for it, if I'm honest with you. And thank you for coming today and trusting me, and particularly bringing something to the table that is probably unexpected, and therefore welcome. And here's to many, many more feelings of deep discomfort, which makes us all grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.